All right. Hi, Kriti. How are you?
Hi, I'm good, thank you. How's everything there?
Today, it's not that great. So, for everyone who's joining us live today, my name is Akriti. I am one of the curators here on TPP. And I'm currently in Seattle. We have Kriti with us, who is in India right now and has very kindly um, agreed to go live with us today on a very heavy topic. Before I start, I do want to give a trigger warning. We are going to be talking about suicide identification and how to know to when and how to help someone if you see someone with suicidal tendencies. So if any of these topics are triggers for you, you might not want to go ahead and watch this live. Otherwise, I think we can go ahead and get started. Kriti, why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you for giving me this opportunity, first of all. So, hi, everyone. My name is Kriti. I am currently in India and I am a licensed counselor and I work primarily with children and marital families and homes which have issues with their children. I am a PhD student currently and I'm doing remote school. Nobody knew, but I'm doing remote school from here and I hope I'm going to come back to the States soon. But yeah, that was about me.
Yes, we cannot wait to have you back. Hopefully, things will start rounding up soon. I feel like
Yeah.
there's some issue or the other that keeps coming up. For example, with the fires now, we didn't know it's going to get this bad, especially in Seattle. And this morning, I woke up and there has been like this entire haze outside. And so the reason that I wanted to talk about this topic was um, I have been waking up and getting all of these news alerts. And for some reason, increasingly over the last couple of months, especially during COVID, there have been increasing number of news stories about people committing suicide. So,
Mm-hmm.
and then there have been these entire like articles about how, let's not say they committed suicide, let's say people died by suicide. Now, for someone like me who's just reading all of this news and has taken some time to do some research, but given we are also aware about mental health now and we are all trying to be helpful, what is suicide for a layman? So if you had to explain something like this to me as a professional, what would that be?
Absolutely. So as you said, it's about self-explanatory in the sense of someone takes their own life, and that is suicide. Just that's how plainly I can put it to someone who's lame, who's not aware of what the background is. There is a lot of history so as to what leads someone to take the step. And that we'll obviously get into as we speak. But I think to a layman, I would say someone who is at the brink of feeling a deep sense of helplessness and hopelessness from the world around them. They take that drastic step of committing suicide or, as you said, taking their own lives. Um, because intrinsically, I think human beings are not wired to take their own life because that's extremely I mean it is hurtful at the same time, but it's also very very personal and a very drastic step. So
Right.
there's a lot of mental health baggage that comes with someone who takes that life. It's not a it's not an impetus decision, or it's not something that you just do it at that moment. They've been thinking about it, they've been planning around it, and that's what we call suicide ideation as well.
Okay, so when you talk about suicide ideation, and like you said, since we are not hardwired to do this as humans, and a lot of thinking goes into it, and probably we've been thinking about it for a long time,
Mm-hmm.
what are some of the ways that someone like if there's someone around me who's suicidal, like how can I identify those triggers, or how can I identify those tendencies? So for example, like last night, I think there was a news in India where a girl who was preparing for her medical board exams took
Yep.
her own life by suicide,
Mm-hmm.
and one day before the exams or the results or something, and that was so sad. And that made me think about the time when I was preparing about for my exams. And around the same time, I feel like as um, comparative exams are coming closer in India, people try to commit
Mm-hmm.
suicide. So and then I did my undergrad in VIT as an engineering student, and I feel like in my batch And then 2 years after, my brother joined the college. In his
Mhm.
batch, we had a couple of cases, and then all the classes
Oh
would
my
get
God.
cancelled and things like that. So how, if it was someone around me, like how would I identify those tendencies and be of any help if possible at all?
Absolutely. I think that's a really interesting question because I feel like there are parts to that. So there are stages to someone who can actually commit that particular deed. So the first stage is obviously more affective, which is more emotional. So they detach themselves. So if you find a friend who has a drastic change of emotions and affect with other people, so if they start detaching themselves, if they start talking about the idea of the idea that life is just futile, that's one of the biggest trigger warnings, in the sense of, okay, why is your life suicidal, like why is your life hopeless, or why is it so futile for you? So I think conversations around that, and obviously there is a certain existentialism that comes in there, where we do talk about what is the meaning of life, etc., but the wording is really different when it comes to someone who is who is likely to commit that act. So I think definitely, for someone who feels that life is futile, for someone who feels that there is no reason why we should be alive, like they don't find a reason to get up in the morning and start their day. That is one of the main things for emotional, if you look for emotional reasoning. And cognitively, as I was speaking about, like suicide ideation, it gets to really basic, like, have you decided where you want to do it? Have you decided how you want to do it? When are you going to do it? Are you going to write a letter after it? I mean, before it? So those are like things that as a counselor we are trained to ask, but I think it's not, it's a myth that you say that, if someone is, if you know that someone has that tendency or is going through a depressive state, and then we mostly say, okay, let's not talk about it. And that's the biggest myth, because if you go upfront and say, hey, is everything okay? Have you ever thought about taking your life? That itself is an idea that, okay, someone out there is actually interested in knowing my life. So that hopelessness that I was talking about just
Right.
automatically goes away. So, like, I think the biggest takeaway is that you can ask someone, if you're looking at that, if you're looking at them and saying, I think there is a tendency, you can go and ask them as a very conscientious thing that, hey, have you thought about it? I'm here to help you. I can connect you with people who are trained to help you out. So that's one thing. And I think you brought up a really interesting point, which is, while you were in VIT, you've had situations and cases where, because of that event or accident, there are classes being cancelled. And often I say that that's the fire is already out, and then we take an
Right.
action. And I think before that, it's before that, it's very important that, as we are doing right now, to have a conversation about it. And I often say that there is a trigger warning to this, but people who are even thinking about it, they should definitely, with guidance around somebody who they can trust, they should listen to this conversation, or they should listen to a talk, which sort of reinstills that belief, okay, I'm not alone, life is not hopeless, life is not helpless. So I think this entire process is a lot of steps involved, but I think it's an entire package.
I think all of these are great. And the thing that resonated with me was just being there for someone and asking them the question lets them know someone is thinking about their life. But that thing let me think of people. Okay, so I currently don't think I'm suicidal, but how would
Mm-hmm.
I know? Like, what are the things that I should? Because again, like I said, all of this mental health awareness, and I've been very open about this. That a lot
Mm-hmm.
of my learning right now has come because of the activity on social media, and because a lot of people
Absolutely.
have been talking about it. Growing up, I don't think I had anyone around me who would have a conversation about mental health and taking care of myself. Depression was not a thing. Depression was people who go to mental health institutes and stay there. And then, as I've
Yeah.
gotten more exposure, I've grown up. I went to a different city to study. Then I went to Hong Kong
Mm-hmm.
to study. Now I'm here in the US. The more I meet people, the more I realize that there is so much more to that, and I keep trying on educating myself. But again, I feel like, what are the things that as people who are watching this could identify in themselves? Because I feel like sometimes we don't even know that we might be going through a phase and we need help. So when should I stop and think, okay, this is when I need help and I should talk to someone?
Absolutely. So I think backtracking that a little bit, as you said, like getting educated and aware is really important, but at the same time, getting educated and aware about your own family history comes into play here because suicidal is not genetic, but there is a high correlation between if someone in your family has had a history or if your family has suffered from that, there are higher chances that your mental health will be inclined towards that. Now, it's a super ongoing study, and so there's no divisive way of sort of knowing whether genetics play a role, but it's all interconnected. Like depression is definitely genetic, so depression is one of the reasons why it can lead to suicide as well. It's not absolute, but there is a reason. There is reason to believe that it can lead to suicide. So those factors are very important. So I would say definitely knowing your family history is super important. And also in everyday life, I think we're such a generation of like tasks and to-do lists and planning your day, etc. So I think in that's the first step. Like if you get up in the morning and you have persistently since say 3 to 4 months, you have felt like I don't want to do this. Let's cut this meeting off. I don't feel like finishing this task. Or you've seen that there is a history of that your family is telling you that why are you being so aloof and you haven't been in contact with me and etc. Even as simple as opening your WhatsApp or any messenger and seeing when is the last time you texted your really old friend. Like really simple things like that can again give you some affective cues about yourself. So understanding that really minute things. Now this doesn't say that it's gonna, like, we all face that because we get so busy in life and all of that. Like, so I'm not saying this is an absolute truth of if you're having this, you're gonna be leading to a tendency of suicide. But I think definitely that is the starting step of being self-aware. Um, and again, very, very important is if you click on a video which says suicide prevention, suicide awareness, you should be really conscious about, hey, am I looking at this as being aware and being educated, or am I looking at this because I need that help? So the whole idea of, okay, you've clicked on this link today to talk or to listen to someone talk, is that idea of why am I clicking on this link? What is it that's involving me and my brain to watch this? So those are very small cues that you can get.
Okay, so most important, education and then being very self-aware. Um, once, and I think the next question that I have trails onto this, and I feel it's not just for suicide prevention. Again, this is in general, and I feel like
Yeah.
at TPP, in fact, we've been trying to be very open about mental health issues and talking about it because, like I
Mhm.
said, growing up, most of us feel that we just never had those conversations. So once I've identified, maybe not I'm suicidal, but especially that, I think that's like a more specific question that I have. But in general, like, how does one go about seeking help? I figure that you've worked, like you've studied in India, and then I know you came here for
Yeah.
your masters, and like I'm sure you worked with a lot of people in both of the places. So as someone who's never asked for help before, or has whatever kind of social stigma attached to it, or has a difficult family who doesn't think mental health is a thing, how does one go ahead and one ask for help? And second, the more specific question that if someone is having suicidal tendencies, then what are the specific things one must do to get help?
Absolutely. So I think to answer your first question, definitely, I think as you as well, like we studied undergrad in India and then we've come to America for masters, or you've gone abroad. I think definitely identifying the difference between the way that mental health is tackled in both I don't want to say specifically America or India, or just in both Western and Indian or Eastern part of the world. I think suicide is really personal to every person, or even mental health is very, very personal. So I feel like understanding that there is a difference and then identifying that difference. Um, and as you said about stigma, sometimes we don't even know it, but that stigma is extremely family bred, or just the environment that we are in. It's just bred because of that. Unless we realize and talk as you said, like we talk and we sort of become more aware, and you realize that okay, it's actually I don't think that I have a taboo against mental health. So I feel like identifying those factors which is different, which is like what is different between one country and the other, if you've had that opportunity of going from one to the other.
Mhm.
But at the same time, it's very important also to, as you said, take that step. So, and I personally believe that not everybody can go to a counselor, even though I am one. I definitely believe that not everybody can go to a counselor. Specifically, someone who is a student or they might not earn enough, and we know counselors charge a lot, and that's something that we are, as a profession, we are looking into that as well. So I think definitely sort of contacting those fields or firms in which there is just awareness and education. So there are two types of counseling services. There is one where you just get aware and educated, and there's one that you receive the sessions and the therapy. So it can be as small as maybe following a page on Instagram, following a content creator who talks about mental health. I think going ahead, and even if it is to criticize that, but going ahead and actually subscribing to someone who gives that information and doesn't want anything in return, because content on social media is free. You have that pool of information that you can sort of absorb. So definitely trying to get educated from a reliable source is also very, very important. And then the other part that I was talking about as well is that when you want to take help, when you've identified, okay, this is the reason and this is why I'm feeling this way, and you've sort of had that self questioning, how to identify a counselor. Again, if you are in a country where Yellow Pages is there and there is enough public information, go ahead and Google it. It's as simple as that. Google counselors in your vicinity and just pick up the call and, like, pick up the phone and tell them, hey, this is what I'm feeling. It's really simple. Because, and I am very aware of the fact that it's easier said than done. And I'm very aware of the fact that you might not want to just pick up a call, pick up the phone and tell someone who you don't know at all that I need help. So I think the first point of contact can always be your friends, because family comes with a little bit of burden for a lot of people, and I'm very cognizant of that. But the first point of contact can be a friend who is very, very active and aware about mental health. So like contacting them, maybe they know friends, maybe they know sources and resources or touch points that you can get connected to. So I think in the age that we are in, we should definitely use the network and connections that we have. LinkedIn, find it on LinkedIn, like use those sources. Um, and then I think the more legal aspect of this is when you are talking to a counselor, you have to make sure from your end that they maintain 100% confidentiality, that they maintain 100% non-judgmental attitude, and that's pretty much generally what the counselors do. However, this is a really interesting thing that I just also want to point out, which is there are legally and ethically, there are some times that we have to break confidentiality, and self-harm is one of it. So being full aware that when you reach a counselor, when you talk to a counselor, there will be chances that in the future they will get your guardian, your parents, your spouse, your friend, anybody that you identify as a safe person, they will bring them in and they will have the conversation, because a counseling relationship is not forever. And that's one of the drawbacks that we do have with our clients. So having that touch point when we are not aware, when we are not there in their lives, I think that's really important as well. So being aware of what happens in a session always destigmatizes the whole conversation of and around suicide. I hope that answers that question.
It does. And I feel like this is so much information, especially for someone who, and there's only so much you can learn. I always maintain this, Google is great. And at the touch of a button and at the touch of a search query, you can find out so many things. But there's only so much you can learn. And there is so much information in talking to someone and learning from their experience and the things that they do on an everyday basis. Because like I said, I have been trying to be aware and cognizant and reading all of these things, but I have never come across a blog post or a YouTube video that talks about this. And I feel like that is one of the reasons that we wanted to start this channel, because just there's so much value in conversations and, get that
Absolutely.
done. So thank you so much for that. I have one more question that's kind of related, and I don't know if it's stupid, but hear me out. So, when we started thinking about this topic, it was mostly, like I said, you wake up and you read a note about suicide, and then if it's something like I'd say, like, like when we were in VIT, the reason that they wanted to cancel classes was this, because they wanted to give all of the other students time to cool off, and people around the student time to cool off, because they were worried that they might see more cases. And then we see, if the news about the suicide is about someone famous, uh, whether it's a celebrity, or whether it's someone's, say, favorite teacher, or whether
Mm-hmm.
um, if it's someone that people relate to, I feel like more news start popping up, and the reason that they cite is uh, oh, so and so committed suicide, so and so person was very much affected by it. And that's where I feel the entire topic of trigger warnings comes from, that when you talk about suicide, it might trigger other people. I want to like understand a little more about that, like what exactly is that. I think in our earlier call you mentioned something about herd mentality. I also want to understand what that is, and if both of these things are related to each other.
I think absolutely it is super entwined with each other. And I'll give a little bit of focus to herd mentality and then answer the question, which is so as you said, once there is someone who you know that who is taking their own life, there is more chances for you to feel um, that pressure as well. And I'll talk about why. So if I have someone who I look up to, right? If I have someone who I look up to, and why do we look up to someone? Because we think that okay, they've got it, they've got it in their life, they've figured it out, they are leading the best possible life that there is. I want to be like that, and that's the seed of I don't want to say copying, but that's the seed of hey, I'm influenced by this person because we want to be more like so and so. The cases are really, really stuck when it comes to celebrity and followers. That's something that is extremely um, common that we see in the stats as well. But the idea is that I want to be like this person. So in our head, we feel like, okay, this person's got it. So like they've figured out life. When that person, I mean, to be honest, we don't know if someone's figured out life or not. Most often, we're not someone who's figured out our life. But when we hear that this person has done this particular step or has taken that step, there is a reinforcement of the fact that, okay, if this person's life, who we think is super amazing, has been able to do this step, then what is my life in front of them? And again, it reinforces the idea of futility of life. It reinforces the idea that, hey, I was worshiping this person and they didn't have it all going for them clearly. And then what do I have in my life which is going for me then? And then there is a whole idea of herd mentality, wherein a lot of people then start feeling that as well, because one after the other, there are cases that pop up. Now, there was a very interesting conversation that was aired a few years back, which is around whether or not when you stop that person thinking from, so supposing there is someone who's taken their life and I looked up to that. And in that situation or in that span of time, I have someone who can come and talk to me. And I realize that, okay, what I'm thinking might not be right or wrong. It can be right or wrong. I step back and I will not commit that suicide. I will not take that step because someone has logicked and reasoned that out with me. So this reinforces the fact that when herd mentality happens, when there is a conversation of like a lot of people are taking their lives because one event triggered them, it's mostly that it's a sporadic event. That is where most of the research that suicide has been, that's happened around suicide just falls flat, because that is the time where it's a sporadic event of, okay, that person's done it, my life doesn't make sense, I'm going to go take my life. So there is no conversation to themselves, to others. That's a very sporadic and almost, even for them, it's a very illogical step. So that's what the conversation that aired a few years ago was about. Like, there were people who were approached when they were almost in the brink of taking their life with after seeing someone who they valued to their life. And the conversation was like, I didn't think about it, I did it because I felt like, what's going in my life? So I didn't think that, okay, it's not necessary that I need to do that as well. So I think this just also highlights a very, very important point, which is check-ins with somebody, or as an aware person, checking in with someone once in 6 months is not enough. We've got to do it constantly. We've got to do it in a timely manner. I agree and I understand that we're all very busy in lives and stuff. But then if you want to check in with someone, it's about their life and death. And it can't be once in 6 months. It has to be
Wow.
like once every week, to once in 2 weeks. Because, the other thing also is that, hey, I was checking in with this person and they still did it. And then you see that, hey, I was not checking enough maybe, and that's why that happened. So I think that's a very, very nuanced conversation of how much to check in, and how often to check in. But
Mhm.
that's getting into too much details.
Wow. Kriti, thank you so much. I think all of this, even when we were setting this talk up, and I think we were discussing that it's a very heavy topic, but I feel like this is such a good foray into, like you said, like generating awareness, just so we know at least what all there is to look at. And I feel like you said, education, awareness, talking to people, checking in with people, understanding whether or not you have the need to see a therapist, which brings me up with one last question. Like now that I was talking about it, it comes to my head. Um, so I understand that we can talk to our friends, and I feel like all of us have like someone we call our best friend, or like people we are very close to and discuss everything with. And you said that, like it's nice to like talk to them, and if specifically talking about suicide, if you're able to let reason it out that maybe it's not the right thing to do, you probably won't do it, um, compared to actually seeing a therapist. And the reason I asked this question, what I'm going to ask, is because I went to this conference almost a year and a half ago, and I was in a room with 40 people, and we were talking about, I was on the panel, and we were talking about something, and then this woman made a joke about how, oh, I was talking to my therapist about this, and then the topic of mental health started. And it turned
Mhm.
out in that room of 40 people, other than me, all of the 39 people went to therapists. And it's
Wow.
I, yeah, I felt great about it in the sense that nobody has that stigma, and they're like, we don't really have issues, we just have like some sessions once a month, twice a month, set up with a therapist to go and talk. How effective do you think that is in life in general? Like, should everyone be striving towards maybe setting up these sessions? Doesn't have to be every week, maybe once a month, once in a quarter, to check in, or do you think friends are enough?
Well, I'm going to come from a bias, but I'm going to give a quick analogy, right? So every year we have a annual health checkup, and that's a thing. You need to know whether your vitals are okay, and you need to know whether you have your blood sugar is here, there, everywhere, right? So that's an annual health checkup, an annual dental checkup, an annual eye checkup. So I feel like, why not an annual mental health checkup? And that's the conversation that we want to strive for as well. And at the same time, we also want to strive for the conversation of, you can do it yourself as well. It is not necessary that once you start seeing a therapist that it's never going to end, or that it's going to be, it's going to be there for like 5 years, 6 years. That's not true. The new method of therapy, and that's something that I sort of, adapt as well, is very, very solution focused therapy, which is, hey, you come to me with a problem. We're going to find a solution for that. And I'm not going to give you the solution. You're going to find it for yourself, and I'm going to help you or facilitate that conversation of solutions. And if there are other things that come up with that, we are definitely going to talk about it. So it's almost like you focus on something, and then if there are other things, it's not that we're going to brush it aside. We're going to talk about that as well. So it's almost like, okay, I have a direction in my mind, and I know where this is going. And that's actually, a lot of people don't go to therapists because they're like, I don't know why I need to go to a therapist. Like, I don't know what my problem is. And I feel like, once you start talking to a complete stranger who has no idea about your life, who has no opinions in your life, you start realizing that, okay, hey, this is what I need to think about, this is what I need to process, this is what I need to cognitively work on. And definitely, I feel like friends are a great resource to have, but they come with their own biases, they come with their own history that they've shared with you. um, and so maybe they're not going to be as facilitative as they might help you, or as they want to be. And that's why I think talking to a complete stranger is extremely, what do I say? It's cathartic. It's like you literally have to talk to them once, even if it's once in 3 months, it's completely okay. It's like, hey, it's a check-in. Like there is someone who you are going to be accountable to, and
Mhm.
that's the whole idea of checking in with therapists.
Okay.
And I think like it's very very important to have a conversation with them.
Okay. Sounds great. Kriti, this was very helpful. Before we end this conversation, are there any parting thoughts you'd like to leave our viewers with?
Absolutely. I think it was a wonderful conversation. So thank you again for having me. I really appreciate the work that you guys are doing, because I think it's not enough conversations are out there, and I feel like these conversations or these quick bites will really help people to open more floodgates of conversations and open more conversations amongst themselves. And I think that's my parting thought as well. Have that conversation. I think we're all in that stage and age in our life that we want to talk about things but we can't. So I feel like definitely having one person, like today, if you can take anything from this conversation, it's basically you take back that one person, you identify that one person in your life that you can have any conversation with, and who's going to facilitate you and make you meet other people who are helping in your growth. And it shouldn't stop there. Basically it's like, oh, okay, you're having this conversation, I have a great friend or I know a therapist that you can talk to. So someone that you can bounce off is, I think that would be my parting thought.
Okay, sounds great. Once again, Kriti, thank you so much. This was very helpful. I hope it is as helpful to people as it was to me having a conversation. Before we end, I also want to mention that Kriti has a wonderful Instagram page. I'm going to link that in whatever description this video is shared in, just because of the things that she shares. They are very focused on mental health, very straightforward. They make you think, and I'm sure they'll be very helpful to everyone. So thank you everyone
Thank
else
you.
for joining. And thank you so much, Kriti. We hope we can get you back soon, and good luck with the rest of your PhD.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And I hope you stay safe today with all the filter going on in
Thank
Seattle.
you. I really need it. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.